I'm going to compare and contrast the four different district council areas to how each one has performed. Because when I actually did this, looked at the stats this afternoon or this morning, there was some really surprising information here that amazed me, so it's going to blow your mind. I'm going to look at, if you want to tell the future, the best way is to look at the past. So for the first half, I'm going to talk about what has actually happened in South Lincolnshire and South East Lincolnshire property market in the last 25 years, because that will give us a guide to what's going to happen for the next 25 years. I'm going to prove beyond doubt that the buy-to-let market will continue to grow in the medium to long term if you adopt certain principles to your investment strategy. You see, if you were a buy-to-let landlord and you came into the market in the year 2000, a blind man on a galloping horse could have made money. It was easy as falling off a log. You just bought any old rubbish at any old auction, at any old property, and you'd make money. It was so easy, a blind man on a galloping horse could make money. But today, things are getting much harder, and if you are going to make money, you need to be smarter. Using the, you wouldn't even think of dream of investing in the stock market without taking advice. So why the hell do you not go to an auction and focus on that terraced house on King Street? But oh no, some swine buys it. So you go and buy a little terraced house in Bourne, a place you've never visited, sir. God's sake, who'd want to live in Bourne? But you do. It's a lovely place, by the way. You landlords, you've got this, and you've got this. And most of you buy with this, when in reality, you should be using this. Because if you're going to make money, because the magic thing is buy-to-let investment, investment meaning you're going to make more money. If you're going to make more money, you have to work smarter, not harder. You have to take advice from people like myself, from people like Paul and his team at Hill & Clark, and give you the best advice possible to enable you to let's be frank, with Trump and Brexit on the doorstep, what the hell's going to happen to your property investments? God help you all. So anyway, let's have a look. At the end, we're going to do a Q&A, all being well. If I rattle through this quick enough, we'll have you away for 8 o'clock, and we'll be all tucked in bed for 8:30. Here we go. So, what has happened to the South Lincolnshire property market in the last 25 years? As you can see here on this very awesome graph, we actually have what has happened to average property prices in the 4 district council areas covered by the areas we've got here tonight. As you can see, Boston there. Look at poor old Boston. Look how the blue line, it shot up in 2002, 2003, and then it crashed down, and then it bumbled along a little bit and off she went. And then there's old South Holland doing quite nicely. Look how South Holland overtook East Lindsey, and everybody was going, oh, look at South Kesteven. Anyone here from South Kesteven? Oh, come on. Yeah, we're all proud from here. Oh, yeah. Look how awesome South Kesteven are. And look how bad Boston's done. You're all rubbish. Look at you. Oh, look. But this is the problem with graphs. You see, that looks awfully pretty, and if anyone wants a copy of this, more than happy to send you a gorgeous copy of this graph. This graph actually tells you absolutely nothing. Because you know the old things, lies down lies and stats. This graph tells us nothing. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Which council area has performed the best since 1995? So I'm going to give you a clue. We're going to go backwards, so just have a look. Here we go. Which one of the 4 do you think has performed the best? So here we go. Let's have a little bit of a, what's it called, straw poll. Who thinks it's Boston? Put your hands up if you think Boston has been the best performing area. Let's just have a quick look. No, okay. South Holland. South Kesteven. Come on, let's see some arms. Team here. See some arms. Let's have East Lindsey. Okay, here we go. Coming in at number 4 is East Lindsey. Property prices since 1995 have risen by 272%. In third place, South Kesteven at 344%. Coming in at second, South Holland at 358, and in first place, Boston at 390%. You see, We're talking really low numbers here. South Kesteven looks like it's flown away. But in reality, Boston's performed the best. But look at that little jump there. There you go. So don't believe everything you see on the pretty graphs in the Daily Telegraph. Let's look at the actual numbers here. And you can actually see that Boston price, the average property in Boston has gone from 32 grand to 157,000 pounds and a few hundred pounds, 390%. East Lindsey from 47 to 175, South Holland from 41 to 192, and South Kesteven, yeah, me and you chap, 48 to 215. You've got to remember with South Kesteven, not only is it bored, but we've got the posh people in Stamford. That tends to jug the figures up a bit, because you know what they're all like in Stamford, because it's got Waitrose, didn't you know? So, what I then did is, because as I said, we don't have too many slides, because otherwise you'll be here till midnight, and we all want to be tucked in bed for 10 o'clock. I took the average of all four areas of what the average value of a property was in 1995, and it was £42,550. Can we remember when properties were that cheap, Oh yeah. My gran used to say, boy, you could buy a terraced house in Grantham for 500 quid, 50 quid down. Oh, remember the days, yeah. And today, in Lincolnshire, of those four council areas, the average is 185. Now, sir, if you had put £42,500, let's move the screen so we're all on the sheet. If you had put £42,000 in the building society, what would you be sitting on today, sir? 43,000. 20 years. We had a little bit of inflation in the late 90s. Maybe
48.
48.
No, more.
More? Come on, give me some figures.
More because of compound interest.
Yeah, look, compound interest. So come on, give me some figures, sir.
I would say 65.
65, let's have a look. It's actually 99,000. That's not bad. Oh, hold on a second. If you bought a house, 185. Oh, we haven't even put the rent in there yet, though. That's just capital growth. Okay, and if you put it in the stock market, 102 grand. Not bad, is it? There you go. Not bad at all. So, this is what average properties have been selling for in Lincolnshire since 1995. Okay? Selling, not what they're actually worth, there's a difference. So as you can see, throughout the early 90s, late 90s, people started to roller coaster, and then we had the double-digit inflation of house prices in the good old years of 2001, when you lot were basically buying anything, saying, oh, I'll buy a brand new David Wilson show home, 20 grand over the price, but it's gorgeous, not affordable. Yeah, but you're all buying it because it didn't matter because they were going up by 20%. Then you'll notice in 2006, 2005, things leveled off a bit, then we went again. Then we had the drop of the credit crunch. Can anyone remember that? And then what you'll then do is then chugging along quite nicely. Then from 2014, we got took off. Now this is really interesting. It's not on the graph here, but I want to share this with you. Up until 2009, the London property market matched Lincolnshire percentage for percentage within a, So if Lincolnshire went up by 10%, London tends to go up by 10%. In the property crash, when property prices dropped, on average in the UK about 19%. In London they dropped by 17 or 18%. In Lincolnshire, I'm going to show you some numbers now, quite different numbers around the different district councils. But something really weird happens. Can you see here from 2010, we had 2 or 3 years of stagnation. Basically what happened in London is everyone stopped to rocket on their backside and it just went absolutely stupid. And now the London property market is a completely different beast, completely different. It could almost be a different country. Property prices in London at this moment in time are about 8 or 9% lower than they were a year ago. Yet, around here, they're up 2, 3, 4%. Different market. But what you'll tend to find is the press are down in London. So if you're reading your Daily Telegraph and woe is me into the count of 3, that's probably because they own a property in Chelsea. But we aren't in Chelsea, we're in rural Lincolnshire. We're a different marketplace. So let's move on. Look at how the different types of property have changed in value. You know, you'll see the best performing property is the terraced house. Now, this is for Lincolnshire. Lincolnshire, when you actually start breaking them down, what you'll often find is certain towns, semis are a bit better than terrace. The best performing, if you look at all the towns, again I haven't got all the numbers for you because I don't want you to be here till midnight, but the bottom line is that in all of the Lincolnshire areas, semi-detached or terrace have been the best performing areas, and then the detached houses have been next, and then on average apartments at the bottom. You see, something really weird's happened. If you go back to probably about 30 or 40 years ago, each town has its bog standard 2-bedroom terraced house, okay? And each town has its very, like the really posh roads with all the big, where all the doctors live, those posh roads near the Pilgrim. Okay, so there's a pretty standard, big box that these posh people live in. Now, what you'll tend to find is this. 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, it would have been 5 terraced houses for a big posh house here. Yeah? So you would expect, wouldn't you, today, that it would be still 5 terraced houses would buy 1 big posh house here, wouldn't it? No, it's 3.5 terraced houses. You see, the bottom line is this, the big posh stuff, and when we're talking posh stuff, we're talking £750,000 upwards, they have really performed really badly compared to the starter market. And that's because of you lot. Because you've been buying them all up. You've not been buying 2-bedroom terraced houses because it's a start home and we'll go without. You've been looking at the numbers. So terraced houses and 2-bedroom semis have, especially in 2000 to 2005, really took off because you weren't looking at it as a home, you were looking at it as an investment vehicle. So in reality, the gap has never been better from moving from a smaller house to a bigger house, in real terms. So whilst you're sitting on pretty on your little 2-bedroom terrace buy-to-let portfolio empire, got to help you in one of them big boxes because that's not worth as much as it used to be. Oh well, such is fine. Moving on. This is what happened to property prices between 2007 and 2009 with the credit crunch, and the UK average was 19%. So as you can quite clearly see, South Holland did pretty well. They were kind of, they didn't hit as much as anywhere else. Whilst Boston, well, that's the national average. But this is interesting. How much have property prices increased in Lincolnshire since 2009? I'm not going to show you the graph because you'll, got to give you some fun. So let's have a little bit of a straw poll. Who thinks it's 4.3%? Put your hands up. Come on, let's see some more hands. Okay, next one is 8.3. Who thinks it's 8.3? Oh, we've got 2 there, 2 brave. 12.7. I've got any more? 12, good stuff. 24.6. 34.6, 38.7, and 49.7. The answer is 34.6. And if you then split that down into the different council areas, you can quite clearly see that East Lindsey has not performed particularly well, whilst Boston and South West Stephen have done very well. Well, that's interesting. Now, I find it really strange that the UK judges the health of the property market on property prices. Property prices have gone up by 10%. Everyone goes, yes! If property prices go up by 10%, that means you landlords have to pay 10% more for your buy-to-let investment. It means first-time buyers have to pay 10% more for their first-time buy house. Okay, so your 50 grand terraced house goes up by 50%. So now, all of a sudden, the 50 grand is now 75. So I've made 75 grand, 25 grand, haven't I? Absolutely marvellous. But the problem is, the 100 grand, when my house was 50 and the 3-bedroom detached was 100, that's gone up by 50%, which now that's gone up from 100 to 150. So now the gap has got bigger. Most people move up market throughout their starter home, 2-bedroom, semi, 3-bed detached, 4-bed detached. They're moving up the market, and if they're moving up the market and prices are getting much bigger, then the gap gets bigger. That's bad news for everyone, isn't it? The only good news that improved house prices actually benefits is people selling their dead parents' home. Sorry to put that way, but that's true. Is there any people it benefits? See, later on, you're going to ask me, are we going to have another property crash? Well, if I knew that, we'd be still here, but we possibly could. But if we do have a property crash, I don't believe that we should be panicking about it. You see, this is the number of properties sold. Now, just for information, just for the colours, red is terraced. Sorry, the bottom one is apartments, red is terraced, yellow is semi-detached, and green is detached. Can you see? Now, what's the first thing that you can quite clearly see? Is, have you noticed that it's almost like a pattern to this? Yeah? You see, what happens is this. Spring, spring, summer, summer, Christmas, no one moves. Just a day, it's a turkey, get on with life. Spring, 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 everyone sells a turkey. Spring, 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 summer holidays, turkey. Okay? And look how simple it is. And also, look how there was a little bit of a gap there, and then we carried on because we were crocking and rocking and rolling, and all of a sudden we had the credit crunch, and you can see that's what happened. Now, bonus points here, okay? No estate agents answer this one. What do you think that spike is there? There's a brownie point. You get something that money can't buy stings. That was the stamp duty one, and so you get something that money can't buy. Excellent. Now, you see, if you are, most people that buy houses are sellers and buyers, and if it's a seller's market, that's great for you, but that means you screw the other side and go and buy. If we do have a property crash, see, not even the word property crash, some people use the word price adjustment because that sounds much nicer. Then that means there's a cracking bargain. But even when property prices are rising at 15–20%, there's actually there were cracking deals out there. That's because you lot are lazy. Sorry, you're lazy. I say that with love and respect. You see, isn't it interesting that people will spend £100,000 to £200,000 and base all their decisions on having a cursory glance on Rightmove? If a property's got a south-facing garden, it means it's got a north-facing front. Go with me on this one. That means that the sun's never on the front, which means that you take a photograph in the autumn, it looks an awful photograph. So as you go through Rightmove, oh no, that doesn't look very nice. No, that doesn't look very nice. There's the deals. And then the next deal, the next thing is to view how many, the average viewer views 5 houses before they buy and spends 20 minutes in each. So work your sums out, that's 100 minutes and you're spending 100 grand. That's a lot of money. That's £1,000 a minute. You're basing your life and your decision on £1,000 a minute. My word. Come on, guys. If you're going to view properties, go view loads. And ask the magic question of the estate agent and also the owner. Tell me why you're moving. Because people fall into 2 different categories when they're selling houses. Got to sell, like to sell. If you want a cracking deal, go and buy the got to sells. Oh, and ask the agent. But people don't pick up the phone anymore because they're afraid of the phone. Ask the estate agent. Everyone at Hill and Clark, you see, why don't you use your letting agent to find you your next house? Because they're not going to buy you anything that's rubbish because they don't want problem tenants because of the damp. Why don't you ask them to find something? And Hill and Clark will go out there and look at the whole of the market. In fact, I'm going to show you some buy-to-let deals, of which the vast majority of them are with their competitors. That screwed their friends up. It's because these might be of interest to you. And as you can quite clearly see, flats are taking much longer to sell, and there's the terraces and semis in the middle. So if you're looking to sell terrace and semis, now these numbers are throughout Lincolnshire, in fact the whole of the UK, are bang on. Let's look at it, how bedrooms, and as you can quite clearly see, 5 bedrooms. So go out if you've got a 5-bedroom detached, but don't worry about that one. Now this is interesting. Normally in rural in Britain, 1-bedrooms are much further up. So that's quite unique in the Midlands, well, Lincolnshire, but 1-bedrooms are less performing. Then we put it into price range. And again, you can quite clearly see as we move further up the price range, it does take much longer to sell a property. The the average time on the market in Lincolnshire, so we go back to 2007, so this was the property crash, and then properties values, and then everyone put the house on the market, so they were panicking, put the house on the market, and then basically what happened is we had a lot more, properties were taking much longer to sell. Can you then see from 2012, we have almost like a roller coaster, in terms of the different colours, red, if you want the overall average, it's the purple one, and then the different colours are the different, I think red is detached, yellow is semi-detached, and green and pink are terraced and semis. But basically, can you see that roller coaster? Now this is really important. You see that roller coaster is the same roller coaster of the winter. So houses take much longer to sell in the winter than they do in the summer. That's the roller coaster effect. Notice that the general direction is going downwards. So if you are going to buy, make sure that you buy in the winter and ask, why are you moving? Tell me why you're moving. Here's an interesting fact. Has anyone bought a brand new house in the last 4 or 5 years? Brand new, off a builder? You're not. Okay. Now this is a great tip for you. In a good market, you will pay over the odds compared to second hand, but in a bad market, you will pay less because builders have to sell. And I think, Lewis, you've got an article on that about a year ago.
Yes.
You did actually show a graph on that, so that's quite interesting. Right, okay. Oh, look, magic thing. Now, number of properties, now this is important. Have you noticed that there are less for sale boards out there? So this is the total number of properties for sale. So in 07, we had a lot. Now this is interesting, because in 08 to 09, we had a bit of a dip. Now in most places in the UK, that was like a mountain, okay? And then slowly but surely, we've been taking the lower houses on the market until May 18, it's gone up a bit. Now, if there's one of the factors that's kept prices quite high, has been this. Less people have been putting their houses on the market. Less choice, demand and supply shows that if you've noticed that, you've got to pay more for the house, or because there's not much choice. However, you as landlords, more houses are coming on the market. There are more on the market, so there's potentially better opportunities. Again, when you are in the autumn and the winter, please look at those photographs that people will dismiss. The rule of thumb when it comes to estate agency is this: the more people that click on the right move advert, the more people that view it. The more people that view it, the more offers you'll get, and the better price you'll sell. It's a simple fact, isn't it? Yeah. Okay? But if people don't click on the photographs because it's a poor photo, so really just go for the rubbish photos. And again, on Rightmove, huge tip for you: when you put your Rightmove alert in or search, don't put it in price order. There's a button that says oldest first. Click on that. And it shows you the houses that have been hanging around. Now, some estate agents are a bit sneaky. They take the property off the market and then put it back on the market again. But again, legally, you are allowed to ask the agent, how long, when did you put this house on the market? And ask and find out. And then ask them why they're moving. Right, so, home ownership. All of you are buy-to-let landlords, and you want to make sure that the tenants are still going to be there in 5, 10 or 20 years' time. So, here's a question. In 2001, now I've chosen Boston, just because we are closest to Boston, but these numbers are almost identical for the rest of the councils in the areas that we cover. So, in 2001, which was the last but one census, 16,638 houses in Boston were homeowners. Where did the number go to in 2011? Is this on? Is it off? Oh, I was forget you. Come on, shout some numbers in. Shout some, come on. Where do we think? Because obviously it just plummeted, doesn't it? 15?
10.
10? So this was 2011. The numbers got released in 2014, but remember the housing market is like a super tanker. It does move quite slowly. And I'm going to hit you with the most up-to-date numbers in a second. Okay, here's the numbers. Went up. But this is weird. The number of households that were homeowners went up, but the percentage went down. Weird, isn't it? And that's because of this. Because in those 10 years, just over 3,300 properties were built. Yet the number of private rental properties went from 1,400 to just over 4,200, of which some of you in this room have bought some of those properties. Taking the number of rentals in Boston from 5.9 to 15.7 as a council, and in the town, 19.1% of houses are privately rented. Now you're going to say, well, this is 2019, Chris, what about the numbers? Okay, we haven't got exact numbers for Boston because they don't exist, but there are numbers for the region, and I would say that this number here is probably, it could even be slightly higher. Home ownership in the last 2 or 3 years, as a percentage, has gone up. The Daily Mail don't tell you that because bad news sells newspapers. But home ownership has gone up slightly in terms of raw numbers. Yet, the number of private rentals has gone through the roof. So let's find out why. Well, before we do that, let's look at what's happened to rents. So, since 2008, there's been inflation of 31%. So the question is, what's happened to rents in that time? So who thinks rents have risen by 79.5%? No? 44? Put your hands up when you say yes. 38, 37, 36, 28, 20, it's 12.4. It's not my sister, aren't you? Good job. Well, there you go. You get a brownie point for that. Now, I don't want to be cheeky with you, but what actually happened in 2008 is that property values, rents dropped. If I'd have said to you 2010, we would be looking at 38 to 44%. You see, what happened, and we're going to go through this in a little bit more detail in a second, is that, well, if I bought my house in 1995 for £100,000, how much did I buy my house for, sir? No, £100,000 in 95. And then by 2007, it had gone up to £300,000. So I bought it for 100 in 95, and it had gone up to £300,000 by 2007. How much money have I made? £200,000. And then the property crash happened, didn't it? And property values dropped by anywhere between 12 and 19%. So let's go for a nice round figure. They dropped, my £300,000 house dropped to 250. How much money have I made? No. People don't think that way. I've lost 50. You never had it, but that's how people think. And that's one of the reasons, which I'll come on to in a second, why buy-to-let has gone through the roof. You see, what happened was, an awful lot of people humans are programmed not to lose, hate losing stuff. See, if I said, would you like to make £5,000? Or you could lose £5,000. Marketing has proved that you're more likely to get more reaction from losing than gaining. And humans don't like to lose. And this is one of the reasons why buy-to-let has increased. So, why aren't the youngsters today buying their houses? So again, these are stats for Boston, okay? Which you quite clearly see the youngsters in 1998, 44.6% of 25 to 29-year-olds own their own home in Boston. Whilst today, it's 23%. And look at all the other ages. Now that's been dropping. There's only one age which basically home ownership's gone through the roof, and that's 55 upwards. Okay, so why are the youngsters not buying any house anymore? So here is another straw poll, and I want everyone to participate in this one, please. I'm going to give you 3 options. Is it because property is too expensive? Put your hand up if you think that's the main reason. Job mobility. Or can't get the deposit. Do you know? Love you guys. Love you guys. Okay. 95% mortgages are the staple of mortgages, okay? Yes, you know, Northern Rock deserved everything they got because basically, I used to be a bank manager many years ago, and I'm not joking you got a mortgage with a note from your mum. I just you not. Honestly, they were the lender of any last resort. They would throw money at you. As you walk past, there, get some money, here, lots of cash. So, 95%, basically, when the credit crunch happened in 2000, late 2008, 2007, 2008, basically everything went into shutdown, and you couldn't get a mortgage for toffee unless you put a huge deposit down. So the question is, when did 95% mortgages come back? What do you think, sir? 13? 12? Anyone brave enough to go below that? Fools? They actually did, okay, I'll put you out of your misery. They came back in 2009. They were only away for about 9 months. I'm not joking with you. 95% mortgages were available with the Halifax, because I was the Halifax bank manager at that time. Because my claim to fame is, I was on the Halifax TV advert with Howard. Yeah, I know. I was the token family. And I just you not, 95% mortgages came back in the spring of 2009 with the Halifax. Pretty big lender. We're not talking about, you know, some backstreet lender here. We're talking about mainstream. Okay, this one might surprise you. Did you know that 100% mortgages have been available with Barclays for the last 4.5 years? 100%. More, 100% with Watkins. Oh, at the extortionate rate of 3.5%. Some of you in this room can remember 15%. Yeah, 3.5%. Wow. Do you know why farmers got big ears and no hair? How much? Yeah. Okay. Now, I went on to moneysupermarket.com, and I went to, as a first-time buyer, went to look at the mortgages. And I'm thinking to myself, I can remember my first house when I bought it with my wife in 1997, and we got into the fixed rate of 6.95%. Get in, 6.95. Does anything there offend you, sir? As cheap as chips. Cheap as chips. Look at that. Okay, so I went on to Tinterweb. I was looking and said, you know, I want to live in the metropolis that is called Boston. And I want to live on King Street. The zenith of terraced house streets. A typical terraced house, very nice inside. I mean, I could buy that. There's one on the market at the moment with an estate agent that needs a bit of work for a princess of £69,950. But no, Mrs. Watkins didn't want to do any work. So we're going to buy this palace, this gorgeous palace from Thomas Campbell Estate Agents, of £84,950. And if I go to Barclays and have my mortgage, it will cost me £353 a month. And with the Hanley mortgage, Hanley is Staffordshire, by the way, for those of you who don't know, £299 a month for a 35-year mortgage. But if I rented it, it would cost me £550. Okay, so hold on. I've got to get a £4,800 deposit. Okay? Not a 30% deposit, a £5 grand. Okay, so I can either keep my iPhone 8 out of people buying houses anymore. So the best way to tell the future is look at the past. So here's a graph of home ownership tenure going back to the end of the First World War. And in 1918, the top part is private rented, the graphy paper is what was that? Own occupation, should know that. And then the middle bit is social housing, which we'll call council housing, but we have to say social housing. Can we all agree that? So in 1918, 3/4 of people privately rented and 25% of people owned their own home. Council, basically after the First World War, councils were starting to build more houses. Notice how home ownership wasn't really growing that much. Then we got to the mid-50s, and then all of a sudden there was an explosion in home ownership. But what you'll also find is there was also an explosion in the number of council houses that were being built, about 250,000 a year. Okay? What was happening was, as we were going through the 70s and 80s, then can you notice here that there was, in 1981, the number of ownership lumped up and the number of social housing went down. What happened in around 79, 80? Margaret Thatcher sending the council houses. So all of a sudden, all the council houses, the nice ones, not the nasty ones, but the nice ones, you know, the nice area of the 70s, they all got bought. You see, if you actually go back to that map, private renting, everyone thinks private renting starts to grow because of the credit crunch. Private rental sector has been growing since the early 1990s. Look how it's been going down. And at the moment, because this graph goes up to 2008, it is a little bit where that red dot is. Nationally, we are at about 17%. Some people say that we will be at 25% in 5-6 years' time, and we could be at 30% probably in 10 or 15 years' time. And I'm going to prove to you that that is going to, the reasons why that growth will only continue. Some of you will panic over if we have a bad, nasty Brexit. Some of you will panic over oil prices. You will panic. Don't panic. The number of properties being built at this moment in time, in the UK needs to stand still 240,000 households a year. Because you lot are living longer. And if you not live longer, that means you stick in your house much longer, and those that are coming up through the ranks in the age need somewhere to live. Yes, you are going to say, well, what about immigration? Yes, 30% to 40% of immigrations come from the EU, which we can control with Brexit. However, the other 60% is immigration that we do control, and that is continuing to grow. The divorce rate is quite high. One family becomes 2 households. And the problem is that since 2000, 240,000 houses are required to stand still. The average has been about 160. The closest we ever got was last year at 211. But if there's that 80,000 gap between 240 and 160, that doesn't get moved. That doesn't. Last year's that 80 grand doesn't get lost. That just builds up and builds up and builds up. And until we start building 300,000 houses a year, and the council start building on basically green land. Okay. It's not on here. How much of England do you think is built on? 5%? 10? Not brave enough? 10%? 1.2% of Britain is built on. Isn't it? You know when you fly into East Midlands, look at all the green land. We've got loads of space. It's just that there's that, oh, we don't want to build it in my backyard. It's true. So, here are the 5 reasons why buy-to-let will only increase. The first reason is Margaret Thatcher, daughter of Grantham, I come from Grantham, was sold off all the council houses. If you remember the council houses, you move in at the 3-bedroom semi as a family, and then when the kids bugger off, you leave the 3-bedroom semi, leaving it for someone else. You then go into the council 2-bedroom bungalow, and you stay there until you carry out in a box, and then basically they then follow on from you, and it just carries on. But if you're taking one out of the equation, you're not leaving it for the next one. You see, if you're not renting through the council aren't building any houses anymore because they haven't got any money to sweep the streets, let alone build houses, that's what you lot should have medals. Because if it weren't for you lot, there'd be homelessness through the roof. And people deride you because you make money. Well, it's an investment, I'm sorry. Yes, you're going to have to be smarter to continue to make those sort of monies, but it's still, you have basically solved one of the biggest problems in the UK, which is housing people, and good for you. The second reason is these houses out 1988. Who here was a landlord before 88? Can you remember the good old days? Assured tenancies, or rent act stuff where you couldn't get anyone out unless you sent the good boys round. and I mean the boys, okay? And, you know, there was actually some tenancies set up where you were in the property at like £1 a week, and your offspring could have the right to be in the property at the same rent for £1 a week for life, and then their grandkids as well had the right. No wonder no one was lending any money on it, and no one was buying any houses. I, as I say, used to work for Halifax, and in the good old days of the before the Housing Act, when we had a repossession, there was only 5 people in the town that bought the repos. Professional landlords. But then, dinner party buy-to-let landlords, and some of you in this room are dinner party buy-to-let landlords. You'll be at your meeting after the Lions Club or the Rotary, at your dinner party table. There's Bob and Sue, and there's Karen and Roger. And Karen says, "No, darling, we just bought that lovely David Wilson 3-bedroom semi-show home, the last one. And we paid 10 grand over, but it's got all the furniture. Have you noticed they never have any doors, and the furniture's always a bit small?" Okay. Now the problem is this. Before 1997, there was no buy-to-let mortgages. So if you wanted to borrow money, you had to join the queue with the guys from the commercial people to borrow, the money, from Jim's Electrical or Jim's Engineering who wanted to buy the lathe. Now, if you recall, back in 1997, interest rates were at about 6-7%. We weren't getting any capital growth at the time, so if you were going to buy a property, borrow it at 6 or 7 and getting no capital growth, you'd need to be getting a yield of 8 or 9 to make it worthwhile, wouldn't you? The only houses that tend to get offered great yields are stuff at the bottom end of the food chain. Rising damp Rigsby style, single glazed with chip on the wall. Yet what happened is in 1997, and we got buy-to-let mortgages, which all of a sudden mortgage rates were starting to come down, and then Karen and Roger were basically, I talked about head and heart, we were buying with their heart, and they were buying the gorgeous David Wilson 3-bedroom show home. It didn't matter that they weren't making that much money because the capital growth was at 20%. Now, the capital value to buy that versus that's double, if not more than that, but the rent isn't double. So someone living in that can upgrade themselves to something like that for probably no more than 150 quid a month. I'm now living in a David Wilson 3-bedroom semi that's absolutely gorgeous inside. Or I can live there. Where are you going to live? And then we had this fourth reasons. We talked about the 100 grand, 300 grand, back down to 250. Everyone took their houses on the market because if they couldn't sell it, they put them up for rent, and that's why rents dropped through the roof. And then we had a second introduction of gorgeous houses, but 3- and 4-bedroom detached houses. And now all of a sudden, Karen, what happened was the tenant there to upgrade from one of those to something like that was another £100. It would take, you could, for the sake of 100, 250 quid a month, you could live in a 3- or 4-bedroom detached house with en suites coming out your ears. It would take you 20 years to get that on a mortgage, but oh no, look at that, that's gorgeous inside. Who the hell would want to leave from that, walk down to local Halifax and say, right, you can buy your own house, but it's a 2-bedroom terrace on King Street in Boston. No one likes to down the road, do they? This is the killer one though. There's been a huge change in attitude to renting. The Daily Mail has been saying for the last 5-6 years is, yes, you need a 30% deposit to get the best deals. Yes, at 1.9%, they don't tell you that 95% mortgages came back in 95. That came back, 95% mortgages came back in 09, and they're at 2.9%. Because bad news sells newspapers. And then you parents, because you've been believing this rubbish, have not been applying pressure to your kids saying, oh, I think it's time for you to give up your avocado and toast and your iPhone 12 X, whatever it's called. So why would you, you can upgrade from that, for 150 quid to get from that, and you can upgrade from that to go to that. Why would you want it? There's no social pressure from you parents. There's no social pressure from the kids, because basically what happened in the 80s was that we were like sheep, well, we want to buy a house because everyone else is. No one leaves. And really, it's just a change in attitude to renting. It was seen as a poor man's choice in the 70s and 80s. It isn't anymore. We used to buy a Ford Mondeo, 2.4 kids, a dog, and now just people rent. It's just the way it is. I mean, when you say 30%, yeah, 30%, but that's all we were in 1990, 67, 68, which is going back to where we were. We're turning to Germany. And in Germany, what happens is this. You don't buy your first house until you're 750. You get your money from your parents, which, fingers crossed, they don't go to the nursing home, you eat all that money, and you buy your own home. Up to that, you rent, and that's what's going to happen. See, the older generation, when they die, there's so much money, there's trillions tied up in home ownership in the older generation, that money will trickle down, and there'll be a second whoosh. Right, on the final stretch now. If you are buying a house, you can earn money from either yield or capital growth. So what's the best? Well, interestingly, most people say yield is the best. However, my opinion is that yield and capital growth tend to sit on a seesaw. If you want great yield, the capital growth is normally very poor. Okay? And vice versa. Okay? So I've just done a little, let's sit with you, sir. Let's have a here we go. Decent 3-bedroom semi for 156 grand in Pilgrim. If the property rises in the next 25 years by half the rate it has in the last 25 years, the value of that property will rise to 384,000, giving a profit of 228,000. The rent over a period is £318,000, assuming that the rent rises by a very conservative 1.7%. Then you've got these swines like estate agents and mortgage companies, you've got to pay them some money. So that's 212 off, giving a profit of 196. Let's put that into nice things. If you buy a property today, 3-bedroom semi near the Pilgrim, and you assume that property prices in the next 25 years go up at half the rate they have for the last 25 years, and rents go up by a modest 1.75%, that's the amount of money you will make. 364,000 in future money, or in today's money, worth £196,831. Or you could panic. Choice is yours. Buy to let is a long-term investment. Winners in this world play the long game. You wouldn't put money in a pension and expect to earn from it today. This is a long-term investment. You either buy, if you need the income from it, go and buy some yielding stuff. But those of you in your 30s and 40s, play the long game. Play for the capital growth and the yield, and you will win. Now, let's have a quick look. These are some yield maps. Basically, the green and the blue are great yields, but not decent capital growth. And the yellows are decent, somewhere in the middle, and the reds are decent capital growth, but low yield. Okay? Small or each. Long sort of. If anyone wants these, I'll send these to Paul and we can send them on. And then sunny Boston. Quite interestingly, have you noticed how Boston's quite different? All the blue in the centre, quite low yielding area, especially King Street near the centre. Okay, so what should a landlord be doing? I've actually gone and found some cracky buy-to-let deals. Okay, these are the ones that caught my eye. I have no financial involvement in this. I just spotted these, so let's just rattle through these very quickly. %. Again, it's a gross yield, so you've got the service charge and ground rent to consider on that one, but still, if you're looking for income. Now, this is a cracking one. I think this is where this is where clever money should be. Bungalows. You will be amazed the amount of people, older generation, who privately rent. Oh, sorry. Terrace house. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to buy-to-let, the best advice I can give you is this. This is the last slide. The best thing, I find it really funny that you landlords would more likely give your PIN number to Paul or your chosen agent, your inside leg measurement, and what happens in the privacy of your own home. More likely to give that to an agent than tell your agent how many properties you have in your portfolio. Because you like to spread them around a bit, don't you? You don't want to keep all your eggs in one basket, do you? No. My advice to you would be this. If you want to spread it around, spread the love. There you go. Hide in the ground, leave at home sometime. But basically, write down on a piece of paper your properties, that what you bought it for, what it rents for, and what it owes you. Walk into your agent and say, right, these are this is my empire, this is what it is earning me. Because the first question you should always ask when goodbye to let is, why are you getting in and when are you getting out? Because the amount of you that have bought wrongly, you went to an auction to buy that terraced house and ended up buying that property in Bourne. Okay? Look, because quite often the amount of agents that could just sit down and say, look, if you need income in 10 years' time because you've got no pension, why don't you sell those 2 properties there and invest in those 3 there? But you don't, because, we've got to spread it around a bit, it's all secrets. We know you've got your portfolio with Ready Pie, get off it with Pie Go Pro. We know, we can find out these things, legally as well. Why don't you sit down with your chosen agent and say, that's my portfolio, that's what it's earning me, and in 10 years' time, this needs to pay my pension. And then they'll tell you. Most of you won't because it's secret. But one of you in this room will. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want the magic word is buy-to-let investment, do your homework, talk to professionals, and you will win and have a good life. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.
Ladies